Okay, we're gonna get started. We got a quorum here. Oh, somebody's trying to chat. We got a quorum here. Ryan and I are here. Jerry Stevenson is online and Jefferson Moss is about to log in. And I think we'll have Jonathan for a little while, but.
I'm on, Abby, or
Oh,
Chair.
Jeff, nice to not see you, but see you, hear you.
Almost there, yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, we welcome those in attendance here at the Capitol and with us online. We are recording this meeting. The meeting agenda has been provided online and available to the public. We have an executive director's report, talk about our landfill. We just took the first scoop yesterday, as many of you, I'm still feeling it. But we're gonna get a little update on many of our project areas and a handful of financial actions, tax sharing agreements, so on and so forth. We're gonna have public comment around noon today, if we can get us there in the next 50 minutes. In order to speak, Diana's in the back. Give her fill out the card, and then we'll go in order of what we get. And again, if you aren't able to speak, inlandportauthority.utah.gov. All right, Ryan, I'm going to turn on your mic. Can I get a approval of the minutes from April 30th?
So moved.
I got a motion. Jerry or Jeff, can you give me a second to that?
This is Jerry. I would second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 30th, please say aye.
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 All right, Ben, let's turn on your mic and give us a executive.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to be with our board and also with the public today. Just a couple of items. Most of my executive director report is actually going to be given from some other folks. And so I'll turn the time over to Lynn and then to Mark and Gary. Mark Norden, Gary McEntee who are helping oversee the landfill remediation effort. Before we do that, though, I just want to quickly give an update to our board and to the general public regarding the state of the port. I try and do this pretty regularly, but ultimately, the port is stronger than it has ever been. Occasionally, I'll get a question from somebody who's been dialed out for a couple of years asking what the port is involved with. To answer that question bluntly, a lot. All across the state. At this point, we have 13 project areas in 16 different counties. We'll be reviewing another one today. We've been a part of, including incentivized, mediated, help provide infrastructure for about 30 different companies across the state of Utah. Those are companies that are bringing high-paying jobs to their communities. We're also helping and have helped to develop rail projects in places like Iron County with BZI Still and Savage. We've also are seeing a project coming to fruition in Tooele County in partnership with Savage as well. We're working on several other rail projects across the state. The economic impact over the last 2 years of the port's production is significant. We're excited for what we've been able to accomplish, and not the least of which was a very quick, and we appreciate our friends at the Trust Lands Administration and also Ninigrit, who've helped us bridge what was a purchase of property on February 10th all the way to a groundbreaking yesterday. We understand the environmental risk associated with the landfill in a very urban area and one that's also within the vicinity of the Great Salt Lake ecosystem. For us, it's imperative that we get that landfill cleaned up. And our chair yesterday at that event had some wonderful remarks about the position of economic strength we want to create on that site as well. And so when we take a step back, and I'd also mentioned that last month we had a great opportunity from our board to get directive to work on finalizing a cargo contract with Delta as well. So when we look at where and what the port is involved with, and it's no offense to our partners at the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity or to the Economic Development Corporation of Utah, but we hope we are on par with those other organizations as kind of the preeminent economic development and logistics organizations in the state. We hope that we're a good partner to them and that we're helping them fulfill their mission. They are certainly helping us fulfill our mission, and we see great cohesion between our different entities. So the port is stronger than it has ever been. We see more happening from the port's perspective than anything else. And I just want to mention again a couple of things. A couple of highlights. We're seeing the Stadler Rail project that we incentivized coming to fruition out in the Northwest Quadrant. We're also seeing Northrop Grumman coming to fruition. We'll have a ribbon cutting at Lakeshore Learning next week or a couple of weeks from now. There is amazing work going on all over the state of Utah. We are not an organization that tries to get into headlines. There are a lot of organizations that will do that in the state. Great, good for them. For us, we want to keep the public aware, but we want to get stuff done. Like that's our goal as an organization. I appreciate our team who's been amazing in fulfilling those objectives. And so we feel like our charter's strong. Our board is sensational. They are amazing. Thank you to our incredible board who sets the vision for us. And we feel like the port is in a significant position of strength moving forward. So with that, we will hear a couple of updates. One from Lynn Mayer, who will talk about the state of recruitment. Again, that partnership that I alluded to that's so important, but really key to our efforts. And then we'll have a chance to hear from Mark Nord and Gary McEntee as we talk about what's happening out at the landfill.
All right. Middle and all right, we'll turn you both on. Thanks for being here, Lynn.
Thank you.
I think you got to swallow that mic, unfortunately.
I know, right? I will pull it close and speak loudly, I promise. Thank you very much for having us today, Chairwoman Osborne and members of the board. My name is Lynn Mayer. I'm the Associate Vice President for statewide project area recruitment and development. And we are here today. I'm here today also with Vice President Scott Walford, who we would like to share a high-level overview of our work across the state and a snapshot into the recruitment efforts that we are working on for our project areas. Our office in Salt Lake City serves sort of as a headquarters. The past year and a half, I've been working with Vice President Walford to help create established project areas of regional significance for economic growth, business expansion, with a variety of logistical components to them. These areas around the state are the ones that will be generationally changing to the communities and cities and counties that they represent. This past January, we were lucky to add Lindsay Peterson to our staff, and she has quickly ramped up and become a significant and key contributor to our business development team. Lindsay works not only with Vice President Walford and myself, but also directly with our 4 Associate Vice Presidents, or AVPs, to oversee the regional project areas around the state. Altogether, we work to coordinate and execute a statewide recruitment strategy while also supporting the AVPs as they match the types of industries with the pace that our partner communities want to grow or expand, excuse me, and in a way that's comfortable for them. Most of our project areas are greenfield sites, so the cities and counties are excited to use the financial tools that we have to plan their growth in a smart, sustainable manner. And our AVPs are building trusting relationships with each of them and getting to know their aspirations for each of their communities. As you know, we have created 13 project areas across Utah. Once the project areas have been approved by you, our board, we begin to use the plan and budget document and the targeted industries that are identified in them to match what each city or county wants to focus on bringing to their areas. These project areas center around strategic zones with unique logistics. Whether it be interstates, well-traveled highways, rail lines, or airports, they are planned with an emphasis on economic growth and the opportunity to utilize the financial tools and resources provided to us. As you've heard us say, if you've seen one project area, you've seen one project area. They are all different with unique needs, and we love working with each of them to help secure the things that they desire for their communities. That may be jobs, a new company to support an existing business so they can both grow economically, internships from a company that are offered to the high school students so the kids have jobs after graduation and stay local, or high investment businesses to help bear the cost of high infrastructure needs. Here's a little insight into some of our accomplishments. On a daily basis, we engage in multiple proactive and reactive streams of business engagement and recruitment efforts through referrals from EDC Utah, GOEO, our project area stakeholders and partners, the real estate communities, and from leads that come directly to the port. These leads are called requests for information, or RFIs. Currently, about 57% of those requests come to us from EDC Utah, 13% are from GOEO, and almost 30% come to the port organically from our industry partners, stakeholders, or community connections, or even by word of mouth. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see what's happening right now. We have 60 RFIs working through our system. One of those is new or has recently been introduced to us. 19 have moved to phase 2, which is that one or more of the project area sites have been pitched as a possible location to be considered. And 40 of them have moved another step into phase 3, or where significant discussions, site visits, and/or negotiations have occurred around one or more of our project area sites. Once the RFIs are received by the inland port, Lindsay logs the key information and works with our AVPs to determine if any site in our project areas could be considered. Our AVPs reach out to their contacts in the project areas, share the information about the potential company, and determine if any sites align for consideration. If the project area sees fit, they just say the word and the AVP takes it from there. And they build the RFI submission. Each AVP then works with Lindsay to answer the questions and put together a quick packet of information about the area, branding it with each project area's colors and logos, and the RFI gets submitted. It was probably about 2 years ago now that we started tracking these, and we're really excited to share that we have submitted 322 RFIs, and this number continues to grow each week. Please keep in mind that prior to the inland port or any of the AVPs being involved, these RFI requests would come to the local city manager, an economic development officer, or an administrator in a city or county who would need to stop wearing all the other hats that they have within their city or county duties and gather the information needed for the RFIs to be submitted. And that can be a very short timeline for them. Now, with each AVP taking the lead on their behalf and working with the team at the port, these RFIs get submitted in a professional, concise, comprehensive manner. And as you can see, all of our project areas are growing and expanding in rural areas and providing jobs and making an economic difference for them. If you look at the second quarter of 2025, you can see that through the RFI process, we chased some big numbers for potential jobs and CapEx. Keep in mind that we don't get all the information needed from these potential companies, so these are approximate values. But each dot on this chart represents a project RFI. So this shows that we're competing for upwards of 1,200 new jobs and $1.6 billion, but billion, like Scott likes to say, of CapEx coming to Utah. The dots in the lower left-hand corner of the chart are probably the most beneficial, as they would be considered community builders and would make the biggest impact in most of our project areas around the state. 75 jobs in one of our rural communities can make such a difference to their lifestyles and local economy. So the bottom line, kind of like our executive director alluded to, is that we've been a little busy. I want to share that Scott and I are invited to speak on the road several times a month, providing what we call Port 101. And we provide these discussions to a variety of companies, including economic developers, business organizations, real estate offices, architectural, engineering, and construction firms, title companies, and even commercial office designers, just to name a few. And honestly, on a personal note, it's been so rewarding for me to work with these cities and communities. To be talking through what advantages come with being in a project area and then be in the room when they finally see and understand that we are really there to help them is a truly favorite part of my job. And I've really been honored to be a part of it. So Madam Chair, that's the 30,000-foot view for you today. I appreciate being given the opportunity to share a little bit about what we've been doing behind the scenes. If you have any questions, we'd like to answer for you.
Lynn, I can feel it. I can absolutely feel it. And it is really special when you help a rural community, when you help a Beaver County that just lost the slaughterhouse, replace those jobs with something really impactful. So I love the love that you're showing. And I know the team throughout the port feels this. It's why we've really focused off the Wasatch Front. And, you know, you go back to that map, will you, Scott? Go back to the map of all the areas. Sorry, making you change the presentation. It was so fancy. There you go. And you just look at the corridor that we follow, right? And we follow the rail, we follow the road. We're kind of following air as well, a little bit in some strategic areas, but it's really important, the work that you all do. And thanks for loving it because it makes it so much better.
It's
So,
easy to love. Thank you.
Ryan?
I just wanted to publicly say that I think Lynn needs a raise. And so let that be noticed. She's awesome and
Hear, hear.
congratulations. Here, here.
Thank you, Ryan.
I will say, so having worn the GoEO hat, now wearing the EDC Utah hat. And
Oh, should
speaking
we
to
bring
my-
up that chart?
That, no, that's okay. That's okay.
It's it's just a
They're all
challenge.
important.
It's just a
not, you're not
challenge.
getting, yeah, you can only go up.
It's not a competition.
It's a
but
team effort.
I did just want to say that as EDC Utah goes and recruits companies, and as GoEO goes and recruits companies, having the inland port as our partner is just paramount to the success of Utah's economy. And we need that because a lot of companies, they're not just looking for a state, but they're looking for a specific project area. And so just having this partnership, I think, is really meaningful. So kudos to you and your team, and let's keep it up. So
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark, I think we're going to hear from you and Gary. You're going to do this together? You are kind of the dynamic duo. I will, no offense to Scott and Lynn, but these two are, Mark was the hype man yesterday in our groundbreaking, and Gary's just Gary.
He brought the energy, didn't he?
Yeah.
Mark Nord, Director of Real Estate and Development for the Utah Inland Port.
Gary McEntee with Good Management. I think what we'll try to do today is walk everybody through what we're actually doing at the site as far as the remediation for the landfill. So I'm going to walk through a few slides and try to give you a good sense of what we're going to try to accomplish. First of all, here's the location of the landfill. I think most people know it. It's located along I-80. And I want to just pick up on something that Ben had mentioned before in terms of economic development. This is a ridiculously unique site. This is 800 acres that has access directly off the interstate I-80, has rail service already, is proximate to the airport, and within Salt Lake City. I don't know if there's another 800-acre parcel in Utah or in the general region that has as much potential as this site does. But before we can unlock that potential, we've got to remediate this landfill. So let's talk about how we're going to go about doing that. Again, here's the landfill shown outlined in red. The intersection of I-80 there at 7200 West. The future Mountain View Corridor Exchange will actually enter onto I-80 on the southeast corner of this site, which is on your bottom right-hand corner of this slide. Inland Port, as I mentioned, took ownership of this site on February 10th. When you come out there now, you'll see the signage for the Inland Port's property, and you also see the signage for our construction operation. In order to remediate this landfill, you need to understand how the waste got there, and you need to understand all the different idiosyncrasies of those, how that waste was placed. This graphic identifies the various times in which the waste was actually placed in the landfill. This landfill is operated by Salt Lake City from late 1950s into 1978. And if you can see on the graphic, this graphic identifies the eras in which the waste was deposited. The key to that is that as you go over a 20-year period, the constituents in the waste change. So in the area that we were working yesterday, which is phase 1, that's the earliest waste. So that's in the late 50s to early 60s. You don't see any plastics. As we go across the site, we get into this 1970s and such, the waste composition will change, and that presents another challenge for us as we move forward with the remediation. This graphic identifies what is phase 1. It's 185 acres that will be cleaned up and ready for development. In addition to that, we'll have a 40-acre repository. So the area outlined in red is the phase 1 cleanup area. Of that 185 acres, 150 have solid waste that we need to consolidate and remove. Okay. So as I talked about the history of the project in terms of landfill, what we're looking here is we're going to do a waste consolidation, so a brownfield development. So we will take the waste from the existing cells, we'll excavate those waste, we'll move that to a repository, okay? And the idea of that is to consolidate the waste within that new repository and opening up that 185 acres for future development. The part of phase one is important for us and for DEQ because this is beyond a little bit more of a proof of concept. It allows us to work within this area, learn from our in-field experience, and apply it as we remediate across the site. When this project was developed, with Salt Lake City, how they basically constructed the landfill. It's not a landfill like you would see today, which is a large, tall mound. This was basically a trench landfill. So what they would do, they would dig out a long trench in the ground with a backhoe or a drag line. They would dig that out. They would then take the waste, place it into the cell, and then throw the dirt back on top of it. Not very sophisticated, but that's why this started in the 1950s. There was not a lot of regulations on landfills. So we have a series of individual cells that run across the landfill. What happens with that, as you can see from the graphic, is the hatch marks represent the waste that was deposited in the cells. The darker areas are really levees in between those cells. That's native soil. The soil out there is lake bed clay, which has had quite an effect on this landfill. It's very fortuitous for us that Salt Lake City did that because that clay has low permeability and has minimized the amount of migration of the leachate from the cell. The leachate that I refer to is precipitation that falls on the ground, percolates through the waste, and then collects at the bottom of the cell. So you have a series of, in essence, bathtubs where you've got waste, you have government material, waste, and then you have the leachate at the bottom of the cell. That waste will be excavated, and then the leachate will be pumped and go into a treatment facility, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So this is a typical cell that we've opened up in an area that has quite a bit of leachate. You can see the waste on both sides of the trench, but you can see the leachate that's now been collected within that trench itself. So that leachate will be pumped, as I mentioned before, to holding ponds and then introduced to a treatment facility. Once we take the waste out of a cell, we're able to come back and compact. But part of what we need to do with DEQ as part of our approved wrap is that we need to do confirmation sampling. So we will sample that soil beneath that waste to make sure that we've gotten all the contamination out of that soil. If we have contamination in the first 6 inches, we'll dig that trench a little bit lower until we get to a point where there's no further contamination. As I mentioned before, we have 181 acres in phase one, 150 contained waste. It is a waste excavation and consolidation. We've introduced a tremendous amount of environmental protections within our plan to minimize any impacts from our operation. We have a leachate management system where we're going to treat the leachate. We have air and odor controls. So at the site, we have odor controls. I think many people who were out at the site yesterday saw that. We have along the boundary, we have misters to minimize any odors. And so we protect against our neighbors. If you're out at the site yesterday and you got a kind of a funny odor from you that you could tell, it wasn't from our operation. It's actually that odor came from the Salt Lake County's landfill as they operate, as the wind was blowing from the south. So we are very sensitive to making sure that we don't create those kind of conditions on site. Okay. As I mentioned before, the leachate is one of the issues that we need to deal with across the site. That has to be remediated and it has to be treated. In our previous time at the site, we went through a series of different treatment tests we call pilot studies to identify how to be able to treat the leachate. In this particular one, we're using activated carbon and some flocculant to treat the leachate and be able to move it to a PLTW. At some point in time in the future, that may be an option that we work with Salt Lake City on, but for right now, we're going to use a different technology, which is a little more innovative, which is called the leachate evaporator. This is a leachate evaporator here, and I'll explain to you what this basically does. This is the technology that was basically developed in Israel through a university in Israel as part of their efforts to desalinate salt water. The idea here is we take the leachate, we run it into these holding ponds, and then we pump the leachate on top of this structure. And in the structure, there's 180 cells. Those are fabrics, those are proprietary fabrics, where the leachate actually runs along the cell, and we use the natural environment that we have here in Salt Lake of warm, dry temperatures and a good wind to evaporate it. We believe we'll get 90% evaporation of the leachate. After the leachate's evaporated, we're left with the brine, and with that brine, we'll either consolidate it and put it back in the repository, or we'll treat it and move it over to a PLTW facility. As I mentioned before, we've got a bunch of environmental safeguards. Any exposed waste on the site will be covered. It'll be covered either with tarps that we'll use at the trench excavation site and on at the repository, or we'll have some type of daily cover over there. The point of that is to minimize any odor and minimize any vectors that will be attracted to the open waste. What I will comment on to you on terms of the waste is that most of the waste is decomposed. And if you saw that yesterday when we took our first scoop, it's not really, it doesn't look like garbage. It's decomposed mess is what it is, okay? So there's not a lot of biological degradation to come. That biological degradation is how you get methane gas. So although when we do the final cap in the repository, we'll have methane gas venting systems, we don't expect a lot of methane from this waste that we have here, because most of that anaerobic digestion has already occurred. Here's an idea of a graphic that shows phase one. You can see in the yellow in the middle, that's the size of the repository. It's about 40 acres, maybe 30 feet high. But the other sections here point to something else that we've done on the site that I think is part of what we want to do, is bring that innovative technology to minimize environmental impacts. On the left-hand side of the slide are two graphics. They identify the soil material that came from the construction of City Creek. There was 350,000 yards of good granular borrow stream bed that was dug out for the parking garage of City Creek, and then another 250,000 tons of concrete that was all certified clean at the site and brought out for storage at the landfill. What we've done is we've hired a local contractor to work with us to take that concrete and produce it into a usable road base. So we've taken, in essence, waste, now we've converted into road base. So the amount of material that we've got now is probably close to 230 tons of road base, of which the inland port will probably retain 100 to 110 tons of road base that can be used on site. The benefit to that is if you were to buy that in the market today, it would cost you $14 to $17 a ton, and we're only paying $6 a ton to have it processed. So that's not only an economic benefit, but an environmental benefit that the project brings. This is a detail of the cap of the landfill. As I mentioned before, what we want to do is stop the infiltration of water into the waste. So as we build a new repository and we put waste into the depths of 20 feet in height, what we want to do is ensure that we don't have more precipitation going through that waste and creating more leachate. So this identifies the design of that cap. This is a state-of-the-art cap, similar to what you would do for a landfill today under Subtitle D compliance. Okay. So what are we doing? As I mentioned before, we're doing the concrete crushing. We're also doing, we'll show you a little bit further, an expanded groundwater monitoring plan and testing, not only on our site, but on the boundary, on the neighboring sites. We are getting close to our pre-remediation efforts. We're looking for the waste excavation initiation, and we'll be looking now in evaluating a design for a cutoff wall, which would go along the western boundary of the site to minimize any migration of groundwater off the site. Okay. This is a photograph showing the area where we had, and many of you may have gone by, 7200 when you saw the big piles of concrete. This has all been stripped, moved to a crusher. The next slide will show you what the road base looks like. That pile right there is about 80,000 tons of road base. So you get a sense of just how much material we really have. Okay. If you go to the next slide, this is difficult to see, but every location here identifies a groundwater sampling or a soil gas sampling location that we are now underway in doing our next round of sampling with DEQ. So this will give us more data and confirm what we've got on site. And again, I mentioned it before, is there migration off the site? There's some migration. It is not a major problem. There is no plume that is migrating out to the Great Salt Lake. As you go off this site by 800, 900 feet to 1,000 feet, you're almost back to background levels. The benefit of that is because the site was built in an area that has that tight clay beneath it. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to curtail any further migration of groundwater off the site. So that's why we'll be looking at a design and implementation of a cutoff wall along that western boundary, because that's the flow of groundwater from in the northwest direction. Okay, so where are we? Pre-construction is pretty much completed. We've built the haul roads. We've got all the environmental safeguards out there. We start waste excavation. In fact, we started it yesterday. We had the first scoop, the first excavation. Everybody got a chance to see that. We'll be working on that. I would say to you, our production will be a little bit slower in the first few months as we figure out logistics and minimize a lot of things that we have to focus on, like dust and odor controls. And then we'll start working on that. By the next couple of weeks, we'll be in full production. So you'll see a lot of activity out on the site. The next part of that is once we build that repository, once we build a repository, we better build a cap. We anticipate that we will be 2 construction seasons. So this year, we'll probably pause for the winter because it's very difficult to excavate waste and build a repository in that wet weather. We'll probably pause for 3 or 4 months, pick it up back next spring, but we should be completed with phase 1, we hope, by late summer, early August, early October of next year.
2026.
Correct, 2026. And if you move ahead, now you can see that we did start yesterday, and we had the board members out there in front of the excavator. That's before we took the first scoop. Victoria actually wanted to get up on the excavator, but since she didn't have safety shoes, we advised against that. So I hope that helps everybody understand what we're doing. We're excited about it. I think it'll be a great project, and we love the participation and partnership with the Inland Port.
Gary, just for the record, I think it's important for everyone in the audience listening online or listening in 20 days to just give a little history about Ninigret quickly and your experience across the US doing this very work.
Sure. I'll even go back a little further because in my previous life, I was with an engineering company and then eventually ran it. That was the #1 solid waste engineering company in the United States. So I've been around landfills in my previous job for over 20 years. When I came out to Salt Lake and partnered with my partner, Randy Abood, who started Ninigret and really developed the first industrial park on the western side of Salt Lake, which is Ninigret Park, right at Bangor in California. I came out to help him with a brownfield, which was owned by Harshaw Chemical. It was a 400-acre alum pond. And we cleaned that pond up, self-funded it over a 9-year period. And that we took 400 acres of alum ponds and converted that. So if you go to California and Bangor now, it is in the heart of the industrial development area and was a pioneer as far as that west side. Also from that, Ninigret, which is a development and construction company, also purchased Utah's industrial depot out in Tooele, which was 800 acres. That particular property was contaminated from the Army. So we've gone through, as we've brought tenants in there, we've gone through and brought in Cabela's, LKQ, Carvana, and worked with them to get them comfortable with all the environmental safeguards that the Army has put in, and we've partnered with the Army to make sure that works. So we're very familiar with working with brownfields. And again, go back to the alum ponds. We worked with DEQ in that group for 10 years. And I've personally been working on the landfill here since 2006 with the previous owners. First with Suburban Land Reserve, where we did multiple pilot studies, and then with Sittler over the last 7 years, working towards getting this phase 1 wrap approved.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
And if I can add, Madam
course.
Chair, I apologize, I had to step out babysitter issue, but as you can tell, Gary is a perfect partner for this project. His background, his expertise, and his knowledge on the site has become invaluable, and we're seeing the progress because of his efforts. And so we're extremely lucky that we were able to get a great partner in Ninegret, and that institutional knowledge that that he has and he brings to it has really allowed us to hit the ground running, get started as soon as we were able to. Frankly, if we were to have to go out and start from scratch, it
Right.
would have been a lengthy process. So we are really fortunate to find him as a partner.
Yeah, thanks for those words, Mark. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate the update.
This is Jerry. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, Jerry, go right ahead.
I have a question of Gary. Joel and I chatted about this for a few minutes yesterday, but what happens, Gary? Can we keep kind of in the back of our heads that possibly we skip the repository and move that waste someplace else? And what does that do to cost? This probably isn't the time to try and get into detail on that, but I'd really like to dig into that a little bit.
Gary, that's a fair question. And there's obviously something that I think you would want to explore. Let me give you what we had done for Suburban Land Reserve. Back in 2010, Brian Carrington, who ran the PRI and Suburban Land Reserve Development Group, asked us to do a pilot study to look at moving the waste off site. At that point in time, we're going to move it to the Pioneer landfill, which is right along California Avenue. There was also an option to bring it out to Tooele. The concerns with moving the waste off site is twofold. One, it's very costly and probably doubles or maybe triples your cost because you're still excavating the waste, but now you have to transport off the site. The second part of that becomes a safety issue because a lot of this waste is wet. So when you transport it in a truck, you're having that water leach out onto the roads, and it causes a major problem. The only viable option that I could see in terms of moving off site would to be able to rail it. As I mentioned before, this site is uniquely situated because you already have a rail spur running along the eastern boundary. So if you were able to find a location that you could take the waste to, and economically, because someone's going to charge you a tipping fee for that waste, so you have to figure it out in your calculations. But if you could find a way to rail it, I've done that quite a bit out east to a lot of locations, and I was around some of those in my previous life in the environmental consulting business. That's a possibility. What you have to weigh is what is the benefit, the economic benefit of having that additional land versus the additional cost that you're going to incur by moving it offsite. But it's definitely something that, Jerry, I think we should all take a look at, because I think from the inland ports perspective, your development goals are different than perhaps the previous owners had.
Well, I think our development goals too, we had looked at this site. I think our primary interest clear back in 2017 was probably rail. This would be a massive rail site was a lot of the idea behind it. And I think we've got over that, but I still think there will still have to be rail and possibly wouldn't have to duplicate that. And you could pick up some savings by, putting it in to move the garbage first and then continuing to utilize it. But Eastern Utah, I know there's sites out west. I don't really have rail service to them, but I know Eastern Utah does. And, but I'd like to continue this conversation. This isn't the time I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this now, but I would really like to research this with you. Joel and I talked yesterday. It would be, I think, much better for the inland port and the project area if we didn't have the waste to contend with anymore. And we'll look at costs and see what they are.
We can definitely have that conversation. I think there's a lot of pros and cons, but let's have that conversation. I think it's definitely worth looking into.
Well, I think you're the right guy to talk this over with. I've developed a lot of confidence in you as we've worked together, I guess, for the past 4 or 5 years now. So
Well, I appreciate that, Jerry.
thank you very much. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here. We'll look
Thank you.
forward to hearing a lot from you, Gary, over the next
Hope you come out and see me as well.
year and a half. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Thank you.
All right, Amy, Ariane, what are you, 17, 18? Is that where you're at? Okay, perfect. We'll turn you on and give you some time to give us an update on some board policies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're going to be presenting several policies for review. As a reminder, we are committed to having any board-approved policies reviewed on an annual basis. Henceforth, why several of these are coming up for their review. I usually don't do a presentation, but considering some of the enhanced changes that we have, really wanted to put together, as it relates to the first one on our list, the project area and tax differential policy, what that looks like and what that means, and the enhancements that we've done therein. A couple of things on this. As we've looked at what we've done with this policy, and we've touched upon this last board meeting, that we're really taking this in what used to be known as the incentive subcommittee and transforming it into the tax differential committee, and also adding additional tax differential funding mechanisms to be approved and or reviewed and recommended to the board for approval. With this, we wanted to highlight kind of the changes around this. So originally with this policy, we had the incentives committee and we were taking our business recruitment incentives through this prior to board approval. Now we're enhancing this, and as we've talked about, there's a name change to this. It's been reflected on our website as well. We're going to take these additional funding requests that include, the interlocal agreements where there's a tax sharing component or other financial component to it. We also want to bring our project area and plan and budget, not only the creations, but any amendments to this committee, any of the public infrastructure district applications, and any of what we call our tax differential loans and trigger by parcel resolutions. So those are enhancements that are going to go forward with this policy BP4. In addition, we wanted to highlight.
Amy,
Oh, yes.
could I just add a quick
Yeah.
comment on that? Look, I think for those, Madam Chair, if it's okay, sorry. For those who are looking at how you work with the port and you're looking at this new policy, and you're saying you're making it, from the port's perspective, you're making it harder for those who want to engage in the port's public financing tools. You're making it harder to engage with the port on those public financing tools. 100%. Yes, we are. We are standardizing things, making sure that we have good processes in place. We're taking it through all of these tax differential efforts, any touch points through this new committee. This committee is comprised of 3 of our board members, 2 voting, 1 non-voting, and also our CFO that sit on that tax differential committee. We are going to make it a little bit more stringent for those who are interested in using the port's resources, whether that's public infrastructure districts, tax sharing agreements, incentives. So all of the above are now going to put through additional levels of verification. It's not that we don't trust. We're already doing a pretty thorough job reviewing these, but we just want to make sure that we're doing everything in an aligned fashion. What we don't want to get into in any way, shape, or form is the wild, wild west of tax differential. I know the public may be looking at this and saying, we don't even think, tax differential is all that important. It is incredibly important. It's at the very heart of what the port does. And if we don't safeguard these practices, then as an organization, we can get off the rails very, very quickly. No pun intended. So for us, strengthening our policy around this, and I appreciate Amy and Ariane and their good work to do this, but we are going to make it more stringent. We are going to standardize processes. We're going to require more lead time for those who are interested in the process. And what we want to give to legislators, the governor, and our other stakeholders, certainly our communities, is just greater assurance that we're taking these applications through a very rigorous process before they can access our tools. So again, I just want to highlight that and emphasize that, because that becomes something for us that, again, is at the very heart of what we're trying to do at the port.
Move on. Jefferson wants to talk about this because this is his committee.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I appreciate, as a legislator, I guess tomorrow, I guess I won't be able to say that, but the level of scrutiny that we're putting on this, having another group that's taking a look and drilling down deeper, I think is very helpful. Sometimes we get things a little at the higher level here, but knowing there's a lot deeper analysis that's going on to help prior to this meeting, I think will also add additional transparency in the process. So thank you.
All right, Amy, keep keep
Thank
going.
you. I appreciate the conversation on this and the enhanced commentary on why we're doing this. Prior to coming to this institution, I worked for American Express, which the rigor around this, and if folks feel like this is more difficult, I will say the rigor around working and funding with a financial institution is very, has many guardrails, both federally and locally. And we really wanted to make sure there's that consistency around. I wanted to highlight the phases of any tax differential funding request that will go through this committee. As you can see, we're going to have a standardized application process. It will then go to our committee. Now, of course, we're here in our public board meeting. Then we'll go through the appropriate agreement creation with these entities. And then, of course, we want to have an audit compliance component. So as we have these agreements in motion that we are adhering to and ensuring that any of these entities are providing the appropriate information and backup that comports with the agreement requested. I wanted to highlight a little bit on this because we've enhanced this within this policy that we're presenting today for board approval. We're asking that any applications for any of these streams were received at least 45 days prior to the tax differential committee that it'll be presented at. This gives us plenty of time throughout that application review process to look at any underwriting or other reviews that from a financial and compliance and internal reviews that will be needed. While we haven't in this slide elucidated on every single type of application requirement that needs to be provided, I wanted to highlight that, of course, we want anything around these requests to cover the project or corporate or company overview and information around this, as well as what is the public benefit or public good. You'll see that, and that's highlighted within the policy changes for this. While we're not bringing this policy up for review, I wanted to emphasize the importance that we have a very robust process for how we handle the AIB loans. We're not taking the AIB loans to the tax differential committee because by statute, we already have the UIP loan approval committee that is vetted through, and then this process elucidates what these loans will go through. And of course, there's some additional scrutiny with EAC approval and state finance on that. That highlights at least the tax differential committee and what we're doing with that. Some of the other enhancements that I wanted to highlight with this project area and tax differential policy is that we've added some additional parameters around how it will be handling minor revisions to project area plans and budgets. With that, we have found that often there might be changes around how different municipalities and counties track their parcels that affect our project area legal descriptions. And so I wanted to just to let everybody know how this affects us and what we'll be doing for minor revisions. Again, minor revisions will not need board approval, but we always want to keep these correct to reflect against the municipality and city. If there's any revisions on how they account for parcel splitting or recordings or other minor administration modifications. Again, this does not change substantially the boundaries of these, but as we have found, sometimes counties may split a parcel. They may slightly change that, and we want to make sure that these maps and legal descriptions reflect that. And of course, as we have these changes that happen, they'll go through internal with business development teams, as well as our executive director will approve those, and then bring this to our public meeting when we have those minor revisions. We've also put on the last page of this policy how we can handle, and of course, there's been a change with statute, how we can look at business proposals that we receive and decide to vet. And there's an email address that we have on that we will be receiving those and looking at those for the appropriate record retention and protection on that. So I spend a little bit more time on this policy, but there's been a lot of changes to this. So we really want not only our board to understand, but the public in general and any of the constituents and applicants that we work with. I'll pause here and let Ariane do the personnel, and I'll resume the other list.
Thank you, Amy. We brought the personnel to you last board meeting with some edits related to our separation from the state, talking about our Social Security exemption and some policies related to personnel there. So those are the same carried over. The one additional edit is we did some updates to our leave policies to better align with similar local governments. So those are our edits in the personnel policy that we're bringing before you today.
I have the next three policies. Some of these will be brief. We've got our code of conduct policy, that's BP 15, as well as our board governance policy, BP 14, or excuse me, BP 14 is board governance, BP 10 is code of conduct. We do not have any recommended changes at this time but we did want to bring it to the board, and we aren't seeking any action. Lastly, we've got enhancements to our public infrastructure district policy. And we have done a couple things with this. And of course, we touched upon this. As you can see, it goes through our new tax differential committee for review. We've also added the request for having all of these PIDs that are receiving sponsorship and approval through UIPA board, is that we're asking for them to do a procurement policy. We've also put in how this reflects back to our project area and tax differential policy with the applications. We're asking for that 45 minimum requirement for the application and supporting information so that we can appropriately vet and prepare that for our tax differential committee. And then we put in some enhanced roles and responsibilities and guidelines for compliance and reporting. And I wanted to highlight the last page on this that really talks about what that is. Some additional language around this in our governing document that we've asked any of these entities in their boundary and description and map. We're asking for the parcel list as well. Parcels are really how we look and standardize the information around that. So that's extremely helpful to our organization. And then on the last page, we've asked that not only do these entities submit their annual reports, also their annual budgets and any amendments, as well as their audit reports to the organization and our CFO. We're also going to be asking for submission of other things with their attestation for compliance with the nepotism requirements, any certificates of liability insurance, governing document amendments that may happen, impact fee resolutions, the improvement insurance warranty, the copy of the procurement policy that they have, as well as tax levy resolutions and written certification provided to the state auditor's office. Those are things that we'll be reaching out from a compliance and audit just from our organization, just to make sure all of these public infrastructure districts are doing what they intended to do and they have the right oversight, especially being that any of these could be sponsored by our organization. We want to have that in place. So I'll pause there. Those are the updates I have for the board. If there's any questions, concerns, or feedback that they'd like to give related to policies.
Thanks, Amy. Ariane, I would just say on the PIDs, I'm glad we continually do this and audit internally of what the original intention of the PID was, that these 13 areas are, I know we don't have PIDs in all 13 areas, but what they're doing, what they said they were going to do, they're actually executing on. So appreciate that.
I think,
All right. Yes, Jerry.
I've got a phone error here and I can't figure out how to raise my hand, but anyway.
It's okay. What you're doing is just fine. It works, Jerry.
Careful about trying to interrupt, but I have a question. I've been involved in the original PID legislation. And do we need to go back and look at that again from a legislative standpoint and see if there's ways to strengthen that or develop maybe a little different comfort level than we have right now with it? I mean, it's being used very heavily in lots and lots of areas around the state right now. And I'm just wondering if it wouldn't pay to take another look at it.
Yeah. You want to talk, Ben? Go ahead.
I know I don't know if our staff is totally comfortable answering that. So Madam Chair, I'll just answer it. I think the answer, anything we can do to strengthen transparency and what is required of these PIDs is a very positive thing. We're finding a lot of them are getting crosswise with the Lieutenant Governor's office with their required registration and other things. I don't want to present them as a nuisance because they're not. They're a very good tool if they're used the right way. It's just that oversight is probably not a bad thing. Right now, the idea is, well, you can just create them and the PID goes to govern itself. That in practice, that's an idea, but in thought, that's a great idea. In practice, it could probably use a little bit more governance from a legislative standpoint, but I don't want to disrupt the apple cart. That's a big apple cart. So.
Possibly we should maybe hold this conversation with Lieutenant Governor's office and see if they can point out some of what the perceived problems are. Okay, thank you.
Good idea, Senator. Thank you. All right, ladies, thank you for the report. All right, let's go on to Amy and Ben, you're still up, and then we'll invite Rachel up to give us an update on the Salt Lake City interlocal agreement and tax differential. This is always an exciting part of our year that we get to talk about these projects and this allocation that the board works with Salt Lake City on to determine. So we'll go ahead and turn that over. I don't know who's leading. You're gonna go sit. Okay, perfect. Rachel, do you want to join her or no? Okay, very good.
Thank you. I wanted to join our esteemed colleague, Rachel Otto from the city, who I just really enjoy and appreciate her wisdom and expertise as we talk through this partnership. I'm going to be sharing my screen just quickly to show you and to remind everybody how this process works. So with this, I wanted to talk about why we're here today, because we come here annually, and I think often it's been a while, and we want to make sure everybody understands the why and what we're trying to accomplish. Last year, about this time, it was in our June board meeting, we agreed to amend our interlocal agreement. And some of the enhancements around this included how we were going to handle and move forward with this mitigation monies. We moved from doing these separate CIA, HIA traffic studies as per the city's request to this baseline study and preferred scenario. And that's what we went through last fall, working in partnership with the city and getting their feedback and on the draft and going through the contract process for that. We're currently in motion on this and actively working on that and expect to wrap up this agreement that we have with WSP towards the end of the year, and we'll have some regular presentations on this. In the meanwhile, while we have allocated last year the funding for this baseline and preferred scenario, we wanted to come together and with our respective lists. So both UIPA sent over their list to the city with what we were looking for and recommending, and the city also submitted their list back. We did meet earlier this month to talk about what those lists look like. And I am very pleased to say we have a lot of unity on some of these areas that we'll be presenting. Today we'll be seeking for board approval what we want to allocate the funding for. This is our revised list. When we sent over this list over to the city, we had put in this train crossing safety signage. This is in addition to the $150,000 that we approved last year. This will help with the West Side communities as we're looking at providing what train info on these trains and where they will be. This will have some additional intersections that will provide that information. So we have this on, and we have some consistency in what the city wants as well with this. And then our original list, we talked about using it for remediation as well as land preservation, but we wanted to come with this recommendation that using the balance of our 2025 funds for the land preservation. So I'll pause there, and then Ben, I don't know if you want to say anything. Okay, so Rachel, I'll let you present the city's list. Do you want me to project anything or?
No. Thank you so much for giving me this time. Thank you, Amy. Also a pleasure to work with you, of course, as well. So I just want to take a few minutes on the city's request and the port staff's request, and then talk just through for a moment about the overall budgeting and visibility into these funds. So first, I think you have the city's letter in your materials already. Similar to last year, our goal in presenting that proposal to you is really just to give you a range of options for how you might consider allocating these funds. We consult with a group of community stakeholders as city staff and our elected officials come up with this proposal. And while we realize we can't be too prescriptive, we do want to give you some ideas on how we would prefer you to allocate these funds. So as I think you also know, we feel strongly that the community and environmental differential funds should really be used to benefit the adjacent communities, whether it's through environmental protections or improvements or through community programming. That's where we believe these funds should go. Our proposal this year is mostly similar to last year's. You might have noticed that as well, but I did want to note one key difference. This year, we have asked the board to consider allocating about $1.8 million of the community differential funds back to Salt Lake City for public safety and civil code enforcement work in our West Side neighborhoods. These really are two of the city's greatest needs. I don't think it's any secret that the districts and authorities in the city, while we are very enthusiastic about the districts and authorities that we have in the city right now, and firmly believe that they are good for the long-term health and stability of the city. They do put the city in an interesting position as we're trying to figure out how to allocate revenue through new growth to current needs that we have in the city. So if the board chooses to allocate these funds for public safety or civil code enforcement, they could be used for about 22,000 police overtime shifts, or a mix of police overtime shifts, civil compliance officer shifts, and then keeping public spaces clean. I'm more than happy to give the board any additional information if you're interested in this topic. We have, very specific uses, of course, in our city budget on public safety, code enforcement, right-of-way improvements, the Clean City team. There's plenty of needs, and we would provide any level of transparency and comfort the board might need to allocate the funds in that way. So thank you for your consideration of that. Moving to the UIPA staff proposal, I very much appreciate this updated proposal that I'm just seeing today for the first time, and would absolutely support the board allocating those funds to those two uses. We are excited to have alignment again with UIPA on the Trainfill sign crossing. I think that's a huge improvement to the community. We love that project and are happy to participate in that. And of course, the land preservation is something that we feel strongly about and want to continue to commit city funds to that goal as well. It's very helpful to see that additional detail today. And finally, just regarding the overall budgeting and visibility into these funds, it has been a bit unclear to the city exactly how the city generated differential has been spent since 2022. We understand what has been allocated where, and we assume that the board has more visibility into what has actually been expended over the years. But we would also request some additional information, and thank you very much to Ariane for meeting with our CFO at the city. But we would appreciate more visibility into those exact expenditures and how those funds have been spent. We think it could help us better understand the efficiency of those funds, the effectiveness of those funds, and then better tailor our proposals going forward. So thank you very much for your time today, and happy to answer any questions about any of that. Thanks.
That the latter part of your comment makes a lot of sense. And Ariane, it sounds like you're already off and running on this, and I fully support the transparency back to the city on where these funds, these have grown, right? When I first started, these were like $1 million, and now we're talking about much larger than that. So yes, absolutely. This is a partnership. This is certainly the money that we get to allocate together. And I will just say in the position that I sit in my day job, it is so great to hear, Rachel, the emphasis on the public safety component. We were out there yesterday, and we know it's migrating west, and you don't have enough officers or coverage to get to the northwest quadrant as you're super saturated in the areas that we've asked you to be saturated in. And it's great to hear this. And personally, I'm super supportive of this. Joel, it looks like you have a comment. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Ferry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for this presentation, Rachel. From my perspective, thank you for the work you're doing at the city. I just want to let you know I'm fully supportive of utilizing some of these funds for public safety. At the Department of Natural Resources, our officers are not necessarily in the Northwest Quadrant, but we're very close to it. And we feel the pressure on a daily basis of working and living out in that area, of dealing with issues of not just homelessness, but there's a lot of crime that happens, drug use and other things. Just yesterday, as I was driving down Redwood Road, I watched a fist fight happening on the side of the road, and it was really weird and kind of crazy. But there's needs. And so fully supportive of $1.8 million going into public safety type efforts, but combining that with these benefits to the community of land preservation. You and I have been working on some different concepts and ideas, and we just want to talk about, and really highlight the need for this coordination, right? When we work together, we can do more. And I love the partnership that we're building, that we're working on as we try to find creative solutions to address this area that has been somewhat overlooked for decades and generations. As again, like, we see it where all the landfills
To the west.
in that area, right?
Yep.
And as we clean up and remediate one of those, it has been kind of a dumping ground. And so really excited about these, like, forward looking as we try to improve not just the quality of life for the citizens, but the environmental components and long-term benefiting everyone that lives in that area. And then also just, the broader impact of the ecological resource that exists out there. So looking forward to continuing working with you and the city as we do great things together. Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay, thanks, ladies. Appreciate it. We'll go to motions later in the agenda. Steve, let's talk to you about the XR Quadrant Development Public Infrastructure District. And then Danny, if you can be on deck to do the BZI one, we'll just kind of bump through both of those quickly.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I have Benj Becker with Piper Sandler joining me today. Thank you, Madam
Benj,
Chair.
how are you?
All right. Okay, let me just get this going. Okay. So here today just to talk through the XR Quadrant Development LLC proposal for PID. Rolls right off the tongue. We need to workshop the name of that, but appreciate having the time today. We're just going to walk you through the highlights of the request today. You'll find additional information included in your board packet, including the letter of intent and the petition for creation. Again, this is just informational only. We're not asking for any board action on this today. So just providing some highlights here. As you'll note here, just some details of this request. This PID is really meant to address public infrastructure costs through a mill levy. The funding that XR Quadrant Development Piper Sandler is looking for is about $22 million in total. They are not requesting tax increment to participate in this, and it will be wholly governed by the developer in this case, which is at XR Quadrant Development. Benj, would you like to add any commentary to that?
No,
Overview?
simply just a self-imposed mill levy that the developer will pay. No request of tax increment. This project is well under construction, and the developer is looking for a alternative, more affordable way to fund their infrastructure.
So this is the geographic area you might be familiar with north of the landfill just a little bit. We'll zoom in. You can see the 4 buildings footprint that we have there, and this would be for infrastructure to support these locations. Here's a little highlight of what those public infrastructure needs would be. Nothing unusual. We're talking sewer, water, irrigation, roads, curb and gutter, typical things that you would need to support and facilitate the development of this. Again, this is a very critical area for us. This is, as north of I-80 grows, it's very important that we have the right pieces of infrastructure to support that development out that way. So the timeline for this is really as soon as possible. They'd like to get going right away. Board governance being proposed here is 5 members that would be comprised of officers from XR Quadrant Development. They are not looking for Inland Port to participate, simply to sponsor this. So with that, we'll open it up for any questions the board may have.
Any questions? I don't see any.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you
guys.
very much. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, Danny, let's talk about the BZI. Our first child. Firstborn.
Exactly. Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. We quickly share screen here. All right. What we're doing today is the second presentation of the BZI Innovation Park request for the creation of a PID. As you know, and as you mentioned, the Iron Springs Inland Port was our first project area, and the BZI Innovation Park is certainly the flagship of our project area in Iron County. And we're excited to bring this back today for review and for action later in today's meeting. Joining me today is Drake Howell from BZI Innovation Park, in case you have any questions there.
Thanks for coming up.
Just going back to what we discussed in the past meeting, we're looking at the creation of a public infrastructure district. This will cover about 315 acres of the 820 acre BZI Innovation Park. This is a phase one. The developer is also asking Port Authority to approve the boundaries, the entire boundaries of the Innovation Park as an annexation area for the PID, so land can easily be added to this district later. This district will help pay for the public infrastructure for this phase one. This map for your review shows the entire boundaries of the BZI Innovation Park. What you see in white is the 315 acre phase one. Some of that's already been done with the construction of the first building, Nautilus One, and other roads and water, wastewater, other infrastructure has been completed as phase one just within the last week or so. The grade area that you see here is, like we mentioned, requested to be the annexation area. This PID is expected to finance around $90.9 million. The developer would cover any additional costs there. It's anticipated that these infrastructure needs will be very similar to what was just presented for the last one, the sewer, water, storm drains, roads, utilities, etc. Very similar to the last one that we heard. This would be funded through repayment of property taxes. This would be an increased mill levy and not a request for tax differential to be used as part of serving this PID. Timeline, we'd like to get this going as soon as possible. The Innovation Park is ready to begin diving into this pending board approval today as soon as June 1st. Governance of this PID would be a board of trustees that includes 5 members who are officers or agents of the Innovation Park LLC. We wouldn't have Inland Port Authority board member because we're not using that tax differential for this project. That's what we're looking at in a nutshell. Are there any questions specific to this PID?
I don't see any, Jenny. Thank you.
All right, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Jenna? Oh, Danny, don't go far because you're right after her.
Okay, members of the board, appreciate being here today for the first presentation of the Pony Express project area. I had a little bit of a panic moment yesterday when I realized I only had one presentation ready for board meeting today, but looks like this is the only time you're going to hear from me today. You'll find the project area plan and budget draft included in your board meeting materials. This document was also included in the materials sent in advance of this meeting and has been posted on the public meeting public meeting notice site and the UIPA website. In addition to UIPA's current and planned project areas, the Pony Express project area adds a critical component to meeting Utah Inland Port Authority's statutory mission to support and maximize long-term economic benefits for the entire state. By statute, a UIPA project area must meet the following criteria. There's a need to effectuate a public purpose, public benefit to the development project, be economically sound, and promote the statutory goals and objectives of UIPA. Additionally, each project area governmental body must invite the Utah Inland Port Authority to create this project area. The Fairfield and Cedar Fort Town Councils passed resolutions in September, October, and December of 2024. Mayor Holly McKinney was going to join us today, but she was unable. She's actually meeting with the governor on his Build Better initiative. And so I'll just speak to Fairfield Town. They're anticipating explosive growth. Right now, Fairfield Town has a population of 157. Cedar Fort has a population of 411. Within the next 20 or 30 years, this entire area is anticipated to have a population of over 650,000. So they are
Say that again?
650,000 over the next 20 or 30 years. And that
From
that includes this
1,000
entire
to
area.
650,000.
157. Oh, yes. So
Wow.
when we say
Combined.
explosive growth, it's mind blowing how
Utah-wide.
fast, and that does include Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, but yeah, the growth is anticipated to be astronomical out there. Fairfield desires to retain their rural charm, and they don't want to be overtaken by developers and people moving in. So they have asked UIPA to assist them with that and to make sure that we can help them manage that growth and grow responsibly so that they don't lose the charm that they have right now. I'll turn it over to, and that was the map, sorry, of Fairfield. It's out by the airport. There are some additional parcels that we're looking at that may be included before the next presentation, but that's currently what we have in the project area. And I'll turn it over to Mayor Wyatt Cook from Cedar Fort.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. So we're in a similar situation as Fairfield. I grew up out there. I've lived out there my whole life. We have a ton of growth coming out there. It seems like everybody's looking that direction right now. And the hope for this and the exciting part for me is to be a part of seeing this develop and grow and turn into what our kids will see in the future, right? And so I'm really excited for this and hope it's a good partnership and hopefully it'll work really well. And I think it'll be good. So thanks.
Does Cedar Fort and Fairfield, are they adjacent to one another right now? I mean, I know there's probably a lot of land in between, but do they share a boundary?
We don't actually.
You don't? Okay.
It's kind of a unique situation. Actually, Eagle Mountain owns a sliver in between us. So.
Oh, interesting. And we've already seen explosive growth in Eagle Mountain.
Yes.
Saratoga. Okay.
So it's just expanding down into this area.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
All right. Incentives for this project area will favor the following industries: light and medium manufacturing, small scale advanced manufacturing, agriculture technology, renewable energy, and sustainable agriculture processing. The Pony Express project area promotes following goals and objectives to be considered a UIPA project area: ABC, DEF, GHI, JKL, MNO, QRNS, which, like the other rural areas, hits almost every single one of them. I'd again like to thank our speakers today. Thanks for being here, Mayor Cook, and for bringing your perspective and insight, as well as the support in putting together this project area plan and budget draft. As you've heard today, the Pony Express project area not only exceedingly satisfies the objectives of the Utah Inland Port Authority laid out in statute, but also aligns perfectly with the local and regional goals of Fairfield and Cedar Fort towns. As this information is informational only, presentation is informational only, we anticipate no board action at this time, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
I don't see any, Jenna. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
Mayor.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Best of luck with this growth.
We'll need it. Thanks.
All right, Danny. Mineral Mountains. Let's talk about this one.
Okay. We're reviewing this for the second time. We heard more about this presentation at the last board meeting. Essentially, what we're looking at doing with this amendment at the Mineral Mountains project area comes at the request of Beaver County Commission. The map that you see on the screen here is the Milford zone of the Mineral Mountains project area. This is the largest zone of the three in Beaver County. And the red portion is what we are proposing be removed from the project area because agreement that Beaver County has with a solar project developer. They're requesting that we remove that from our project area so they can include that in their own CRA to work with Milford Solar 2 under the same terms that they've done other solar projects in that valley with that development. So it's quite straightforward. It's removing about 920 acres to support the creation of this solar project. Are there any questions?
Danny, thank you. We exhausted this one at length the last meeting, so I did anyway, so apologize for that, but thanks for answering all my questions last month.
Perfect.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Marianne, let's go to you. Give us an update on the PID in the VERC.
Yes, we brought this tax sharing agreement before the board last month, but as we've been working through it, we felt like there was an additional term we wanted to talk to the board about before signing that agreement. So we've been working with the VERC Industrial Regional PID to negotiate a tax sharing agreement that would be beneficial to both the port and the PID and the project area. And as we've been working through it, given the uniqueness of the inland port's ability to trigger parcels, we are looking at adding into the tax sharing agreement this specific language that would agree and covenant for the board to trigger those parcels. So what we're looking to have is the PID would provide us an annual list of parcels that are ready for triggering, and then we would be agreeing as the inland port that we would bring that before the board and the board would adopt those and move them forward. Without this language, the underwriters and bond counsel feel it'd be very difficult for investors to want to purchase the bond that they're trying to sell because there's that added layer of board approval when it comes to the triggering of the parcels that's unique to us. And so this will give the investors of the bonds a little bit more assurance that the revenue, which is the tax increment, will flow to them.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one comment on this as well, Madam Chair, if it's okay. Thank you to Ariane for working this. I just want to highlight this for the board's edification. We get a lot of trust from the board and we really appreciate that. I want to just recognize and highlight this issue because there's sometimes we feel like there are things that we negotiate that are just beyond our pay grade, quote unquote, that really should come back to the board for approval. So more than anything else with this item, I hope the board understands and recognizes we appreciate the trust that you give to staff. There are times though we feel like when it goes above and beyond what we feel like is the fair and negotiated terms that were approved in a public meeting, we need to bring that item back to you for approval. That's how we felt with this provision. We did not feel okay as staff binding a future board. We feel like only the board should be able to do that. So hence why we're bringing this issue back to you just a month later is to ensure that you, the board, get to weigh in on this.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ariane. Appreciate it. All right, a little bit late on moving to public comment, but let's move there. Do we have a stack of, sorry, Larry? All right, remember, we'll go 2 minutes for public comment. We'll invite, there's just two of you, so we'll invite both of you up to speak, Katie Pappas and Joan Gregory, and then we'll just, both of you go. And all three lights are lit, and pick whatever seat you would like to sit at, and time is yours. Katie, welcome.
Thank you. Katie Pappas, Salt Lake City. I'm speaking today in support of Salt Lake City's proposed uses of environmental and community impact funds from the 2024 Inland Port Tax Differential. While I'm glad UIPA also supports some of the funds going to rail crossing safety, land preservation, and public safety, I'm concerned with the use of mitigation funds for North Temple landfill mitigation. I believe this falls outside the spirit and intent of the agreement. UIPA chose to take on this project that was already in the works. Salt Lake City has acted in good faith in its dealings with UIPA and the Utah legislature. Last year, almost $5 million from 2023 tax differential funds went to the landfill remediation. City administrators, through collaboration with West Side neighbors and other stakeholders in the Northwest Quadrant Review Group, are uniquely qualified to advise on best use of these funds. Recent dust events along the Wasatch Front provide a preview of future impacts from port construction, landfill remediation, and a drying Great Salt Lake. West Side communities are especially impacted. In addition to the city's requested allocations, UIPA should also work with the Department of Environmental Quality and provide funding for more air quality monitors around the Great Salt Lake. This year, the Utah legislature funded only a small portion of the requested appropriation for placement and analysis of these monitors. We need them now more than ever. Whenever possible, these mitigation funds should be used for the direct and immediate benefit of communities most impacted by port activities, not for UIPA projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Joan, time is yours.
Today, we have heard the first presentation of the Pony Express project area, which if approved at the next meeting, will be the 14th UIPA project area if we include the Northwest Quadrant. While each one has unique and specific challenges, they all present with some recurring issues: increased traffic and pollution from industrial development, negative impacts on the quality and quantity of local water resources, municipal loss of 75% of project area tax differential revenue needed for important local services, especially for rural residents already losing much needed federal funding. Communities unaware that they are getting a project area until after it has been approved. And we are still in a worsening climate emergency and could lose our Great Salt Lake. Specific issues with this project include current lack of rail service leading to many more truck trips through Fairfield, Cedar Fort, and the surrounding area with increased health impacts. Expansion of the West Desert Air Park to accommodate air cargo. Aviation is the most polluting form of transport. Potential arsenic and other heavy metal soil contamination at this site. Proximity to wetlands, public lands, and a state park and Utah Lake. 19 migratory bird species have been identified in this area, and there is sage grouse habitat nearby. Utah County is already in non-attainment for PM 2.5 and 8-hour ozone. How many communities with logistics hubs, industrial parks, and warehouse farms do we need here? At a time when we face trade wars, economic instability, unregulated harm, and climate disruption, UIPA's continued growth and expansion is unsustainable, economically risky, a threat to human health, and endangers our future. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. That will end public comment today. Appreciate those that commented. All right, let's move on to action of our board policies, BP 04, BP 11, and BP 16 that Amy and Ariane presented today. I will take a motion for the approval of BP 04, the policy area and property tax differential. Representative Moss?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
I have a motion.
I would second.
Thanks, Jerry. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Moving on to the BP 11 that Amy or Ariane presented the personnel policy. Can we get a motion on that one?
I would, so moved.
Jerry, thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jefferson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. All right, let's move on to the PID, the BP 16, the Public Infrastructure District Policy. Motion to approve that updated policy.
And I would so much. Go ahead, Jefferson.
Sorry, Jerry, I was going to tag team it. Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Perfect. Jerry, can we get a second from you? All right, Jerry, can you repeat that second for me?
I would second that motion.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Jerry, are you and I on that one?
I am an aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll rule that motion passes unanimously. All right, next on the Salt Lake City interlocal agreement and tax differential expenditures. Do you have a?
Yes.
You have a
Madam
comment?
Chair,
Okay,
make
yes,
a
of
motion?
course. Oh, a motion, that's an order.
Yes, okay, I'd like to make a motion that we allocate the $180,000 to the train FO in coordination with the city and put the remaining funds into a holding account that could be used for conservation, city law enforcement, police services, or other remediation as determined by the board upon further negotiations.
That motion is in order. Any discussion to the motion?
I would second that motion, but I do have a comment. You know, as we go through these negotiations with the city, if you go back to the very beginning of this process, as we look at that landfill, if it were not for the inland port and the city being in cooperation with one another, the liability of that landfill is probably just horrendously weighted toward Salt Lake City having to take care of it if there's any issues out there. So we certainly appreciate the cooperation and working together on this, but it's kind of a joint rescue plan we've got going here, and I hope everyone appreciates that.
Thanks, Sherry. Any other comments on the motion? And because the motion came from a non-voting member, I think we need a first on that motion and then a second. Jefferson, if we can get a
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
motion to approve what was outlined by Joel and Jerry, can I get your second on that?
I would second that motion.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any further discussion to the motions? No. And we'll take all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. We'll
Did
rule
you
that
get-
motion.
Jerry is an aye.
Thank you, Jerry. We'll rule that motion passes unanimously. All righty, the approval on the BZI PID that Danny presented, no action from us, no differential from us. And we'll just, Ben, will you read? It says Ben is reading the resolution. Is that true?
I am happy to. The motion would be to approve Resolution 2025-31, the creation of the BZI Innovation Park Public Infrastructure District.
That is the motion. Do I have a approval to the motion?
I would move for approval to the motion.
Okay, perfect. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I'll rule that motion passes unanimously. All right, Ben, next, the adoption of Amendment 25-33, the Mineral Mountains Project Area. Will you read that motion, Ben?
The motion is to approve Resolution 2025-33, amendment to the Mineral Mountains Project Area Plan as presented.
All right, approval to that motion. Or excuse me, I need a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jefferson. Second.
And I would second.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. All those in favor to the motion to adopt the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Rule that motion passes unanimously. All right, Ben, let's move on to the VERC PID. Again, same tax sharing trigger that doesn't include any increment from the port. Will you read that resolution?
This motion would be to approve Resolution 2025-34, VERC Industrial Regional PID Interlocal Tax Sharing Trigger Covenant as presented.
All right, can I get a motion to that resolution?
I would move to that resolution.
Thank you.
Take that mo-
Jefferson,
I'll
second.
second that.
Thank you. All those in favor to the motion to adopt the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I'll rule that motion passes unanimously. All right, Jefferson, I'm going to give you, I believe this is, no, you're going to move, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Whatever
When you're-
happens, I can still
when
make a
you're-
motion.
It's right. You can still make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
So
make a motion to adjourn.
perfect. Well, that motion is non-debatable. We'll rule this meeting has come to an adjournment. Thank you all.
Thank you.